We have a lot to get into right now with Columbia University professor and New Yorker writer Jelani Cobb. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, how are you?
I want to tackle a few things with you, going big picture as we sometimes do. Mm-hmm. You watch this State of the Union. Mm-hmm. The president arrives with Republican senators saying he did it. Mm-hmm. Today, he, of course, got this vote where he was acquitted by them. And there was thunderous and repeated Republican applause. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't help but think of Star Wars. Of Queen Amidala, This is how liberty dies,
right,
to thunderous applause.
Right, sure. And I mean, I think there's a kind of stagecraft element of this, which is that this was a reality TV kind of production. And so there are two tracks of this. If you're thinking about just the entertainment value of it, like the people who are tuned in, who are supporters of his, then there's everything that's going to send them through the roof. If you're a person who's actually thinking about democracy, then you're probably cringing and under the couch by the end of that speech, because it was the kind of mainstreaming of his most demagogic personality traits. It is a affirmation. The Senate vote is one thing. You can just say that you, on principle, which is a difficult case to make, I don't believe it, but you could say on principle that you believe that this is wrong, but it doesn't rise to the level of a removal of a conviction. But the real statement about how they feel about Donald Trump's behavior was the reaction that you saw when he entered that room. That it was tribal, it was completely affirming, it was completely a kind of almost like a wedding ceremony between him and, the modern version of the Republican Party.
Well, and what you're saying goes to something you've also written about, which is bearing witness to the facts is important, whether there is power behind it or not, or whether that is still being contested.
Right.
And this is not normal. I want to take one point from this and show everyone. Let's look at some of the past winners of the Medal of Freedom from presidents in both parties. You look at these, you have Mother Teresa, Jackie Robinson, Bill Gates, John Lewis, Maya Angelou, Stephen Hawking, these kind of individuals. Now under Donald Trump, as of last night, you have added to this list Rush Limbaugh. Does he belong anywhere near that group?
I mean, just look at the group. The person who integrated baseball, the person who is globally the most recognized advocate for impoverished people, a civil rights hero, a icon of poetry and literature, Stephen Hawking, who is a person who's triumphant not only in his intellect, but in his ability to wield the intellect despite the debilitating disease that he had fought for decades. And then we have the person who said that the NFL was like Crips and Bloods without weapons. The person who compared Barack Obama to a monkey. The person who said that Donovan McNabb was only in the NFL because they wanted to have a black quarterback succeed. And the kind of lineage of things that could go down, the misogynistic things that, are in his history.
So striking. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.